New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Reverend Robert hanging out behind the banner here.
Rev Z right here.
And this is New Thought Today for today, Tuesday, June 18th, 2024. Thanks for being with us. If you happen to be reading the promotions for today and are expecting a special guest, Reverend Alexandra Musser, unfortunately, we've had some technical difficulties and she is not with us today. So we're lifting her in the high consciousness of knowing everything's happening exactly as it must in a divine time. Sometimes that doesn't make sense to me, but we'll be sure to make sure we get Reverend Alexandra rescheduled for another time. And that means you get the duo show. You get Rev Z and I not fully prepared, and yet I never like saying that because it sounds like we don't know what we're about to talk about, but we do know what we're about to talk about. And ultimately, the divine knows what needs to be said and what we're going to talk about. So we can kind of we'll get around to talking about it sooner or later here, right?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Well, the great thing about the intelligence of the universe, it's always ready, willing, and able to engage, right? And so it's just a matter of everything else being in the right alignment and being open for that conversation to take place.
Exactly. I'm always reminded in situations like this of that great old quote that we've done so much for so long with so little that we're now qualified to do anything for anybody with absolutely nothing at all.
Absolutely nothing.
And that to me, again, that always spoke to that as well. We could tap into the divine mind and say, okay, what needs to happen here? What wants to happen here? And we've got a topic for you today, folks. So might as well dive right into it. If you've been anywhere on Facebook if you've been anywhere on Facebook in this community recently, there it is. You may have seen people taking pictures with this book. The title is Freedom from Discord. The subtitle is The Promise of New Thought Liberation Theology by Reverend David Alexander. And we've had Dr. David on the show a few times now, and we're working to get him back on the show to have a deeper conversation around this book. However, I've been piling into it for the past week and really kind of taking a deeper dive into what this work is. And I'm going to tell you, folks, it's a pretty amazing call to action, I think. Z, remind me, I'm going to have to just get one of these sent your way for you so that so that you don't drag your feet any longer and getting onto this. And here's the other one. Here's the fun thing. I looked at this and I went, if I start taking notes in this book, if I start underlining in this book, I'm going to end up underlining the whole book. I can already feel it. So I waited and I tried not to underline. But I want to share with you the very first place I got to where I was like, oh, I gotta underline that one. Hold on. And I just had it here on my thumb and lost it on you. So let me share this again. There it is. So it was 63 pages in before I picked up the pen. But this is the place that made me go, oh, we got to make sure I can always find this one. The role of the prophetic voice is to reclaim and snatch from the jaws of political cannibalism the topics that belong on the altar of human dignity.
Mm.
You want to hear that again?
Yeah, yeah.
The role of the prophetic voice to reclaim and snatch from the jaws of political cannibalism the topics that belong on the altar of human dignity.
Yes. Yes. You know, and because now everything is colored, shaded, or imposed upon by politics.
Right.
And so this idea of moving away from that genre and moving into a more universal centric, if you will, way of living and way of dealing with things is paramount.
Yes. And that's a big part of the early part of his argument, if you will, as to why New Thought is a liberation theology. It includes, and he does, I don't want to give it all away, and I don't want to quote all the best parts of
Yeah.
But part of what he's saying is we do have to realize that we live in a world where politics is real. And we have to move away from these. He hasn't used the term yet, but I'm going to move away from these Pollyannish attitudes that we can ignore the things that we don't agree with or that we don't think are working and pay attention solely and 100% to the affirmation of it all. We live in a world
Right.
where politics is real and we got to get on with it. I want to find another one in here.
Yeah. Well, it's like, you know, when we start talking about liberation theology, it always points to the father of the idea of black liberation theology, which is Dr. James Cohen. And he made a statement that said to sing about freedom and to pray for it to come is not enough. Freedom must be actualized in history by oppressed people who exceed intelligent challenge to analyze the world for the purpose of changing it. And that's what theology and religion and spirituality is about. It's about changing an environment, a person's perspective, a world, not dictating what you must do, but changing it so that we can harp on that theme that we always do, a world that works for all.
Yes. He quotes James Cone in this in a number of places and uses a number of his quotes as headline markers and here is one actually. The Black Power statement represents the beginning of a radical theological movement towards the development of an independent Black perspective on the Christian faith. And
yeah,
to me, that's something we've talked about here in the past, and it's something that actually I know you're talking about in a whole different interview series that's coming up and that we're about to release into the world on how this Black Christian liberation theology or liberation theology from a Christian perspective became an integral part of the New Thought movement, even though there are so many that don't want to talk about it.
Right, of course. And how appropriate is that given that Juneteenth is tomorrow, right?
Yes.
Because when you look at the church and theology in the Black community, it has always been a liberation theology, right? To try and find a way to subvert or move beyond or away from the oppressor. Now, in that day, it was the slave owner that was the oppressor. And now it appears, in a more general term, that politicians have become the slave owners. And they dictate what happens in society, i.e., on the plantation. And they decide what laws will be enforced or not. And so we're right back in the same place, same ideas, just different titles.
Yes, exactly. And he lays out a number of things on how we can tell that this is, and that we really, and that New Thought really would qualify as a liberation theology. And those principles and characteristics: liberation theology is emergent, it is contextual, and it is the byproduct of contextualizing theological praxis. A lot of fancy stuff going on there, right? But if we think about it, any liberation theology, whether it's Black liberation theology, whether it's LGBTQIA liberation theology, regardless of the oppressed group, and we've said it before, in the hands of privileged white guys, New Thought becomes a prosperity gospel. In the hands of people of color and other oppressed groups, this becomes liberation theology.
Exactly. And because the overwhelming idea is the upliftment of a person's or a group of people's situation. And so if you're already so-called at even board, then the way for you to get uplifted is to get more prosperity. If you're under that radar, you need liberation so that you can get to the table and then think about moving in other directions. And right now, for marginalized communities, whether it be LGBTQ, the Black community, or Hispanic or Latinx community, that is the thing. How do we get to the table and be respected and be valued so that we can have piece of the American pie, if you will?
Yep, exactly. And folks, if you're listening along, whether it's live or at another time, please feel free to drop a comment in the comment box. Let us know what you think and join the conversation. We'd love to hear your voice. So, and yes, I don't think it was any mistake. I'm going to give it, I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to give it up to Spiritual Living Press on this one. We already know that there were some problems with the final release of this book, and it was supposed to come out just a little bit earlier than it did. But I think divine right action was in order, and all those delays brought forward a better book at a better time, because it is Juneteenth. And I want to give a shout out as we continue this conversation. Dr. Tracy Brown did a fabulous job earlier today on this network, and it's part of her Inclusive Church series. And just a couple hours ago, she did the program, so it's available in the archives. It's already playlisted in our YouTube channel and all that. And so I want you to check it out, because she did a great job of really explaining the truth of what Juneteenth is, and not a celebration, an honoring. It is an honoring of freedom. It is not, and gave us a real great explanation of how this came to be and why Juneteenth is truly so important if we are going to create a world of true belonging for all here, especially in America.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll definitely have to go and check that out, because probably at the same time she was giving that presentation, I was giving a presentation at my company on Juneteenth that talked about honoring our ancestors. And I went through a genealogy perspective of some of the events that happen in terms of our ancestry, our lineage, and slave owners taking advantage of slaves and so forth, to kind of highlight that old saying that we may have come over here in different ships, but we're all in the same boat now, and that we need to figure this stuff out, and everybody has some culpability and some blame, and let's figure this out before we destroy the world and ourselves. And Juneteenth is a great way to begin to honor life, freedom, and how we begin to truly enact a liberation theology.
Yes. You stepped right in it there, though, my brother. I'm good. You don't know this because you haven't had a chance to get the book in your hands. And Dr. David does this in a number of places in this book where he kind of throws some sacred cows into the fire, if you will. Mixing my metaphors pretty heavily here. But one of the things he talks about is we have to be real careful when we use that phrase of all being in the same boat. Because the bigger truth is white men in this country are not. Generally speaking, we are all on the same ocean. So we are experiencing the same storms. And yes, there is this piece that we want to create sense of solidarity. And especially as a middle-aged white guy, I got to be very careful not to make the mistake to imply, because my privilege has given me opportunity that even renouncing my privilege can never truly. It's much tougher for me to ever truly understand because I didn't live it. It wasn't ingrained since the time I could crawl.
Yeah, and I would agree, but I think it's a matter of perspective, because just like on the slave plantation, we were on the same plantation. Everybody was getting something different. But if something happened to the slaves, or the slaves didn't get the crops in or whatever, everybody suffered, whether you thought you had privilege or not. And that's right. What I mean when we're in the same boat. People can still take position, but if this boat sinks, whether you privileged or not, you will drown in this one ocean.
All right. I'm going to make sure we let you argue this one out with Dr. David when we get him on the show.
I will do it.
David, this one quote right here. I want to go up. Let's have a talk about it.
Yes. But I get the point because and that was one of the things I talked about in the presentation that I did at work, is that the fourth of my ancestry is out of Ireland, and that fourth was here in colonial times. My fourth great grandfather was here as a part of the fought in the Revolutionary War. So it's a real interesting thing when we start trying to slice it. But if the planet blows up, whether you got money or not, we're all going to be in flame.
Yes. Brother Wayne's using one of my favorite lines: rising tide raises all boats. Yes. So we're all in the same ocean there, Wayne. I'm going to use that as evidence on my side of this conversation. But but that's what I love about what David's doing in this book, is he is bringing forward a number of places where he's saying we've got to be willing to have these tougher conversations around what do we really mean when we say, and what really happens when someone's using spiritual bypass or spiritual gaslighting. What really is going on and he shares a promise that New Thought does stand we stand as the possibility of great leadership in the healing and the reconciliation of some very, very deep wounds on the consciousness of humanity here.
Yes.
But in a lot of ways, he also says we got to kind of get over ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, because, each one of us have our own touch points, our own emotional tolerance or pressure points about any and everything on the planet, right? But I think it becomes very clear that everybody has them, right? And if we're going to try to create this environment where people are able to experience them without being punitive to somebody else, whatever it is, we have to discuss it. If I'm doing something new or saying something or trying to push an idea on you that's not palatable, if you will, the only way I'm going to know is we have a conversation. And that's what this is. That's what it sounds like this book is about. We're saying we're about one thing, but we need to talk about that because the idea of what that one thing is and how it should be enacted is very, very different depending on your perspective.
Yes. Amen and absolutely. So, folks, we're going to take a quick break and let a couple of our sponsors say hello and visit with a couple of folks. Let Elzia and I grab a sip of water. But we do have a whole lot more, and we're going to go in after the break. We're going to talk about the great myths of New Thought and what might have to change in order for us to create and really embody a new liberation theology. We're going to be right back after the break. Stay with us. Don't go away.
People of African Descent New Thought Group are pleased to present Celebrating Our Soul, Consciously Creating Change at Unity Village, Thursday, August 1st through Sunday, August 4th. There are wonderful keynote speakers such as Lucien Baker, Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith, Bishop Jack Bomar, Dr. Tracy Brown, Reverend Dr. Andriette Earl, Reverend Dr. Deborah Johnson, Reverend Charlene Manuel, Reverend Dr. Sheila McKeithen, and Reverend Dr. Derek B. Wells. Regular registration ends June 30th, so don't delay. Register today at padntg.com. Sponsorship opportunities are available at padntg.com. Volunteer opportunities are available at padntg.com. Go there now, padntg.com. See you there.
The New Thought Men's community proudly presents New Thought Men's Summit, Foundations, an online conference, September 22nd through 27th. Register today at www.newthoughtmens.community, featuring 22 New Thought speakers, ministers, and visionaries, sharing their wisdom of modern spiritual masculinity. New Thought Men's community, empowering wholeness, centered in spiritual living.
And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. It does look like our guest has made it to the studio. We'll bring her in just a moment or two because I really want to follow up, and we'll wrap up this, what we were talking about before the break. And here's the biggest one. And so we're going to save a lot of this for next time, Z, but here's the biggest one. The number one myth that New Thought is going to have to let go of if we are, he puts it, here are some of the thoughts that the New Thought movement in its entirety must let go of to manifest a world that works for all. Myth number one, we are not political here. That is his out of the gate idea of what we have to do. And there's a great quote that he uses by a guy named Josh Scott, who wrote the book Bible Stories for Grown-Ups. The idea that Jesus was apolitical, just teaching people how to be nice and get ready for heaven, has been a tool used by empires since at least the 3rd century to keep Christians' attention off of the on-earth part of the Lord's Prayer. What's it going to look like? And here's where I go is, what's it going to look like when New Thought truly embraces this call to let go of the myth that we're not political here? There's politics in our churches. We all know that. We've all served in some way to see that there's politics happening at the local level. And we all know that the biggest appearance, let's say, of separation or division in our country right now is split along political lines. What I hear is we got to pull our heads out of the sand here a little bit.
Well, and like you said, I think this is definitely maybe one or two programs. I mean, I can easily see a program on theology and politics, but because we believe in wholeness and oneness, and political things, I'll just leave it as that without trying to name all the different aspects of politics, are included in every one of them. So for us to begin to say we are not political, it's political if I go to my wife and start lobbying to go this movie and not that movie. That's a political move, right? And so to say that we're not involved in politics, we don't want to be involved in divisive politics, right? But if we need to face it head on, we should be able to do that. But it's a part of life. It's just like saying, well, I don't want to live without my heart, or I don't want to live without my kidneys. Not one, but both. I mean, that's just not how the whole body works. You got to have at least one kidney. And so when we begin to look at our teachings and our way of life that we're putting forward as a valid and a successful way of living, we have to look at the whole thing, and politics is a part.
Yes. All right. Hey, let's bring our guest onto the stage as planned. I want to introduce you to Reverend Alex Musser. Hello, dear one. Welcome.
Hello. I am so sorry. I had it on my schedule that it was at 1:30, and I was teaching because I teach online. So I'm so glad to be here.
It wasn't the first time. It won't be the last time that we've made a mistake. One of us somewhere along the line has made that mistake in transposing the time zone. Yes. So welcome anyway. You get to jump into the deep end with us. This is absolutely none of what we had intended to talk about with you.
But I think it's so good that you're addressing this. I was listening to you from backstage, and I just applaud you that this is the elephant in the room, and somebody has to mention it.
Yes. And to catch you up, it's not us doing it per se, as much as it is Reverend Dr. David Alexander in his new book, Freedom from Discord. Folks, we're really going to encourage everyone that might see this program to grab a copy of that and devour it, because there is so... And I'm not even done yet. I've been waiting to tell people I'm reading it until I've finished with it, but that didn't happen. So I'm going to come back and report on how it does finish out. And again, folks, we're working to get Dr. David onto the program with us. He's appeared here before, and we're pretty sure he'll be back again real soon to have a deeper dive into the book. So, however, let's spend the rest of our time today getting to know Reverend Alex Musser. Now, we met last year at the Convention of Americas, and we want to talk a little bit about that today as well. However, before we do, tell us a little bit more about your ministry. Tell us a little bit more about what you do in the world, and how people can engage with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, they can engage through me, probably through New Thought Media Network since I'm here, but I am affiliated with Seaside Center for Spiritual Living. And that's where I just graduated from with Reverend Dr. Christian Sorensen. But I spend part of my time living in Mexico, which is where I am now with my husband in San Carlos, Mexico, which is in the state of Sonora. It's about 4.5 hours south of the border coming down from Tucson. And then I also spend part of my time in Sholo, Arizona, which is in the northeastern part of Arizona in the mountains. So a lot of my ministry so far has been online, although I do go and give talks and teach workshops, both, online and both live in certain groups. I look forward to teaching a workshop at Chapala on the demonstrable aspects of faith. We're going to be exploring the scientific aspects of faith and why, if we do truly believe in something, how scientifically that goes about demonstrating that in our lives. So I'm very excited about all the new work that I'm doing.
Well, I love that word demonstrative. I mean, that means somebody got to demonstrate something. And
yes.
That is Ernest's bread and butter, if you will. He says you need to go out and prove this teaching works.
Yes. And so, for example, just to give you a brief example, we talk about affirmations. And if we can come to believe our affirmations, and this comes through practice, then our brain, the reticular activating part of our brain, once it starts to believe that, it starts to form different neuro connections to things in our environment that can actually lead us to accomplishing our goals. So for example, if I'm doing a treatment for a certain job, or I'm affirming and doing positive affirmations for a certain job, once that gels in there, and it does take typically, at least 12 to 21 days, then my brain is going to start scanning around for people that I might connect with and put me at that place, at that synchronistic place and point in time when I'm going to run into that person, that if I was to run into them, then we would be able to make what I'm about to create happen, and it would be a win-win. So this is how it starts to generate those connections and make that happen for us. It starts to scan our world around us for those opportunities and make those subtle suggestions that will lead us to that demonstrable place of the activity of our faith.
Outstanding. And that's what we need.
Yes. Yeah. Because the secret in all of that didn't work is people think if they just repeat meaningless stuff, that it's just somehow going to poof into their lives. But we have to believe it, because we are feeding our brain the information that it will then use to go scout out these opportunities for us and create these synchronistic moments of demonstration.
Right. Yes. I've seen over the years, I've seen so many people that will say something to the effect of, oh, all this woo-woo stuff, or and like subtly downplaying the real power behind what it is that one can accomplish through this philosophy, and really kind of, and it really short circuits the whole system. You're working against your own best interests. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important that we work for our best interests.
Well, and if we recognize that we are spirit in expression, for what earthly reason would spirit create obstacles to itself once it has infused this particular me essence of itself, or your essence of yourself, with an idea, a creative impulse, a desire to be something, to do something, to generate something, to create something? For what reason would it then get outside of itself and go create a roadblock? I mean, that doesn't make sense. So then we can accept that we live in a universe that conspires to support us, because it is all one.
Yeah. And that reminds me again of one of Ernest's famous sayings, that a house divided against itself cannot stand.
Yes.
So if the divine creative source is allowing us to have these desires and ideas that generate and keep the world moving and supporting itself, and then why would it turn around and say, okay, well, yeah, well, let me put a roadblock in that way?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead, Z.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask about the work that you're doing down in Mexico. because, the more we can get this idea, and this is my assumption, knowing a little bit I do know about the teachings in Latin America, and a little bit that I know about them being over in Africa and other countries, their application seems to be a little more demonstrative, if you will, than here in Americas, and that kind of leads into that book. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you. First of all, it has to do with the fact that here we present science of mind as a spiritual philosophy. And the majority of people in Mexico are Catholics. We allow them to be whatever they are. We don't compete, as we do in the United States on Sunday morning with other churches. And so they have a very mystical approach to their faith, which I think is what encourages them to be able to demonstrate, as you just put it, so much more than we can, because they're already in that place of belief and of belief in faith. And what I've seen happen in the United States with our teaching is that it seems to replace other teachings. And that could be fine. I mean, whatever people choose that they want to do, but I don't think this was intended to be a religion. And so if we can build on the spiritual faith that an individual has already developed in their lives and give them the tools for powerful transformation, explaining, for example, the demonstrable power of faith, why it works and how it works, then they are already rooted in possibility when we approach them, so they can just pick up and go that much faster.
That's excellent, because as we know, Ernest's idea was to create an educational institute that the purpose was to show the golden thread through all of the religions, highlighting the fact that, in effect, each one of these religious traditions is just like a trail up the mountain, whether it's on the north side, south side, east side, or west side. If you traverse it, you can get to the mountaintop. So if that trail or path suits you, then stay on it. We're going to give you some tools to get up there. If it doesn't, then you can go to another trail, and then we'll give you tools to help you get up that one. But the ultimate goal is to get to the summit, to see the oneness of it all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the reason I'm passionate about this, and this is something that you may not know about me, I was born and raised in Romania. And my family was part of the quote unquote overthrown class with the communist regime. And so when I was 11 years old, almost 12 years old, we left Romania, surrendered the property that had been in my mother's and grandmother's and great grandmother's family for years, and came to the United States because of the idea of the land of milk and honey, right? And so I've been here, obviously, all but those 12 short years of my life, but I've been separated from many members of my family, language, customs, foods, smells, things that trigger you to those happy times of your childhood. Those are like your inner roots. For example, my mom, before she passed away, she had a stroke. And even though she spoke English fluently, and that's all we spoke, after her stroke, she could only speak Romanian. Because that's always back there in the back of your mind, your roots, who you are. And so what I've seen over the years living in the United States, and what I've learned and through this teaching, is that the land of milk and honey is made up by the consciousness of its people. And for all the reasons why these people might be attracted to the United States, if they can grow their joint consciousness to create that, they can create it here in Mexico, in South America, in Africa, anywhere. And if we can help them do that, then we really are building a world that works for all, because now we're more spread out, right? We have this teaching in the United States. We have it in England. We have Reverend Laura Topper there. We even have it in Bucharest, Romania. There is a practitioner minister there. There is no center. We have a center in Ukraine. So if we can take it out and empower these people that it is not the place that makes it so, but the power of mind, the alignment with spirit, the elevating of the vibration, the power of the belief that makes it so, then they can stay where they're at and not have the pain that is always tugging back at my heart a little bit. Is what would have been like if I would have been allowed to stay there. And of course, now we're talking about politics. And as this comes around in the latter part of my life, is like, well, a lot of good that did me. I might as well have stayed. But I don't want to go there. So this is why I'm really passionate about it. I taught conversational English at an English university here in Guaymas, Mexico. These people are training to work in different factories where mechanical engineers, working with technology, everything is in English. And I introduced principles of science of mind, and I introduced them to Tony Roberts, and I introduced them as part of what we talked about, these concepts, not to teach the concepts, to teach English, but they got the concepts to where they can think that you can build this anywhere.
I want to go to Romania. Let's go throw a retreat in Romania somewhere. I
still speak Romanian, and it is a very beautiful country. So be careful what you wish for, because I'm going to raise my hand and go with you. And my husband loves Romania too. We've been there several times. He always wants to go back.
Oh, there we go. All right, a plan is being hatched.
Yes.
Yes.
But I love what you're saying, because in many ways it also echoes something that David Alexander says in the book we were talking about earlier, and that is that we have to come to that deeper understanding that we operate within a collective consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to be able to get the collective. There is no individualized consciousness. It isn't yours or mine. It isn't a consciousness of prosperity. We can look at it that way, but at the bigger understanding, at a deeper understanding, in the deep end of the pool, we have to realize we're operating under a collective consciousness. And therefore, you're also echoing something I talk about all the time. It is our work to support the uprising of new thought wherever it happens, however it looks.
Yes.
And not be the colonizers imposing and oppressing and overlaying what we think works here in North America. Because spoiler alert, folks, we're coming to learn that what we have always thought worked doesn't work as much anymore. So we've got to be willing to serve and support the uprising however it looks, wherever it is on the planet. And that's part of what's happening, I believe, and that's why I'm excited that you're here with us today. And we're going to run out of time before we can fully explore this, but that's why I'm excited about what's happening in Chapala and the Convention of the Americas. And I'm going to be the first to admit I'm late to the party, but I'm really excited to now be a part of what's happening there. And you've been there a little bit longer and doing a bit more there. So tell us a little bit about Convention of the Americas and what people might expect to experience if they were to join us in August. We're going to give you all the dates and all the details later, folks.
Well, first of all, they'll experience you. They'll experience me.
Yes,
right?
New Thought Media Network will be there.
Yes. And so it's, first of all, Chapala is a beautiful place. It is about 4,500 foot elevation. It supposedly has one of the best climates in the world, comparable to the Hawaiian Islands. It's cool. It rains maybe a little bit at night or in the afternoons. And so you go there in August. It's not hot. It's not cold. It's just the weather is beautiful. And what I really love about it is the interface between Americans, and I'm using the word Americans for people that speak strictly English, for Latin Americans, which are people from the United States that are bilingual and involved with our movement, and then the South American people, which is not just Mexico, they're also people from South America. And so we are at this hotel. If one chooses to stay there, we share our meals together at the hotel. That beautiful, beautiful meals. And there's there's ongoing translation. So if somebody speaks English, somebody is in real time translating into Spanish. If somebody speaks Spanish, somebody is in real time translating into English. And we really have the ability to bond with one another, to understand one another's differences. You really have three levels of native Hispanics, native Americans, and we have then the Latino American community, and we all work together to create a better understanding and to bring the teaching forward into these different communities. It's a beautiful place with huge trees, peacocks run around there. We have a view of the lake. And it's just such a spiritually beautiful place. And there's ongoing events. You can participate in all of them, some of them, none of them. Places 45 minutes out of Guadalajara. It's just, I can't say enough good about it. And myself, considering myself an international child, because I traveled all over the world and I was born in Europe and I've gone back many times, I just love being together with people of different cultures. It's just so eye-opening and revealing for me, and learn how I can be in service, and it grows my consciousness and understanding.
Yeah, and that's, you spoke earlier about the one consciousness, the collective consciousness, and as you was saying that, I was thinking about the human body. I always like to put things in that physical perspective, right? And so from the human, if I have a thought, a collective thought in my head that says, go get a glass of water, every piece of my body gets that collective energy and moves to go get the water. And that's what I hear, this teaching is about, and no better place to do it in a natural environment where that impulse, if you will be acted out in different ways, different languages. And we begin to see it's very similar or the exact same. And then the challenge, I believe, comes, how do we amplify that when we go back to our respective places to live this idea? And
as
that's
I
what
listen to you about being the same, I think we are and we're not. So let's just pretend that we're a rough cut diamond. And then we get together with other people, and our facets, we get more facets of each other, and we get brighter and more polished. And then we shine off of each other. And then when we leave there, we're no longer this diamond in the rough. We are this bright, shiny, multifaceted diamond that's reflecting back the other diamonds that you helped mold in the same but individualistic way as it applies to them.
And those diamonds are no longer in close proximity, but they are still reflecting.
Yes.
Because there is that collective consciousness that tie. Once it's connected, it the physics aspect of light or energy that says once two aspects of photons or light are connected or correlated, no matter where they are in the universe, they stay connected. And it's that kind of connection that we get when we have these honest, open, very vulnerable, authentic ways of coming together to talk about only one thing, no matter how it comes out, and that is the understanding of the supreme intelligence and the consciousness that it pervades everything, and that we are one.
Yes. And learning how to use it, and learning how to become powerful as recognizing your own power, your own inner ability, and how to use it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we come to Mexico and these other foreign places, and to really learn how to do that, because over in the States, we tend to approach it, I won't say primarily, but in a lot of ways in a very academic and theoretical way.
I I'm going to even go beyond academic and theoretical. I was taught strictly how to, and for years, I think this movement got a little too hung up on this is the only way to do it. And oh my God, they said the word you in a prayer, and or said we in a prayer, or and okay, I understand that style of training, but I think that New Thought in many ways is outgrowing that. We have to, right? I want to echo back to something that Rev Alex said earlier, and that's about the translation at Convention of the Americas. It isn't even translation. I don't like using that word, because that implies that there is a difference and a separation. There's everybody on a language. It's kind of like we're on an island together, and everybody learns how to communicate transcendent of the language. And yes, when there's someone speaking and going pretty fast in Spanish, I don't pick up all the words. So it's nice to have a little somebody in my ear that's helping me to learn what it is that's being communicated, but the essence is there. And we can feel each other's hearts. And by last year, by the end of the week, and I think this happens in a lot of New Thought conferences and a lot of these collective gatherings that are so important for our movement. We can see beyond the differences, but we can also feel into the oneness. And by the end of the week, it doesn't matter what language you speak, because we can talk with our hands and a smile and an understanding, and sometimes even telepathically that I think what it is, and my needs are met. And I know, and I witness that happening for people all around at these events. It's pretty special. We have a little, we have the first version of our promotional video for this. So we're going to run that. We're going to take a quick break, folks. Let ourselves have another sip of water. But we've got a little bit more to go, so don't go away. We're going to say hello to our sponsors, and then we'll be right back with more of New Thought Today on the New Thought Media Network. Stay with us. You're invited to join us for the Convention of the Americas. Your light is my light. Come experience a bilingual international meeting of New Thought leaders on the beautiful shores of Lake Chapala, Jalisco, Mexico. With keynote speakers, Reverend Dr. Sonny Cantrell Smith, Reverend Jeffrey Ryan, and Reverend Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis. Join us August 6th through the 10th, Lake Chapala, Mexico. Learn more at conventionoftheamericas.com and register today. Your light is my light. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. Reverend Alex, thank you so much for being here. I hope you'll be able to come back again sometime. I feel like we didn't get enough time with you here today.
I would love to. Just let me know. And thank you so much for having me. It's just been wonderful to share.
Absolutely. You know, we generally do a thing around here called Final Thoughts. It doesn't feel like there's so much to try to wrap up today as normally, but I would love to know, what didn't we get to? What would you, if you've had just a couple more minutes to share with people, what didn't we get to? What more would you like to bring into the conversation before we go?
I would like to bring in the wonderful music that we have there at Chapala. And it is both Latin themed and also the songs that we all know that we play in our centers. The music is truly transporting.
Yes, I will say that. And and all the musicians are from a local music school. So these aren't just people throwing it together. These are people that are doing it in the business and are really, really talented. And if you're lucky, you might get to see Reverend Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis sing. But I think I signed a non-disclosure agreement about that from last year, and we're not supposed to talk about that. I'm not sure.
But she is amazing. And so if you come, she has what she calls Practitioner 3 Introductory Workshop. And I did it at Chapala, and you did it too. And then I took the class with her online. It's a wonderful opportunity to really, really, it's only for ministers and practitioners to evolve yourself, to elevate yourself to a higher level of awareness.
Rev Z, anything last before we take off today?
Yeah, the only thing is I'm jealous that I'm not going to be there. I will have to put it on my calendar to make sure that I have the opportunity to get there in 2025 for sure.
Yes. Well, I'm going to start bringing you along everywhere, Z.
I will gladly come.
All right, there we go. All right, folks. And for me, if there is a final thought wrap up today, it's that I'm excited. I'm excited by what I see for the future of New Thought. I'm excited by the conversations that people are having. I'm excited the way our some conferences and some of the events that we're doing are shifting and changing. I'm excited to see the growth on the international front. As I said, seeing New Thought rise up in places around the globe, and you named many of them as well, Rev Alex. So I'm excited for what's next, and we look forward to exploring that with you right here on the New Thought Media Network. We'll be back again next week with more of New Thought Today at 2 p.m. on Tuesdays. Until then, we want to wish you an absolute peace and richest blessings. Bye now.